I've done a lot up until this point to defend this character. I've done a lot up to this point to reinforce this character. I've done a lot up to this point to build this character. I have a lot invested in this character. A lot. I have a lot invested. And if I change character, oh goodness, what's going to happen to those perceptions that you were talking about a moment ago of how people perceive me? Now, here we also get into real shaky ground, because that's where we touch on very primordial, not just needs, but life, like existence, right? Our fears around existence, right? Because if people don't accept me, what does that mean? It means banishment. It means ostracism. It means I literally in a lot of cultures, a lot of up until not that long ago in our history, it meant you die. Okay, so we literally equate the death of the character with the death of the being.
Well, Cortney McDermott, welcome to the Your Body's Way podcast. This is a long time coming. We had a chat a while ago, and I have to say, Cortney, I think you feel the same. When you kind of meet someone for the first time, it's not often that you vibe with them straight away. But I feel like myself and yourself, I feel like, when we chatted back then, we just connected straight away. So I'm so happy to have you on this podcast and having this chat today. So welcome. How are you doing over there in Italy?
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely mutual. I'm great over here. It's rainy right now, so it's really fall. It feels like fall. We just carved some pumpkins and yeah, excited.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So I mean, today my listeners might be thinking, oh, what's the episode about? Because basically, usually my episodes are about food and about exercise and kind of, more going kind of down that route. But today it's more about self-development and how to get what you want, which is a little bit different. It's a little bit of a pivot for my podcast. But I have to say, self-development is a hobby of mine. It's something that I really enjoy. And it's all interlinked, like food, fitness, being healthy, and then also just learning how to figure out what you want and then how to achieve it. And it's all interlinked. Like, we're holistic beings, and everything connects together. So I think it's a perfect episode, and you're pretty perfect for this conversation. So yeah, people find it a little bit different, but I can't wait to get stuck in with it. But basically, with this episode, what I really want to know, Cortney, in this episode is, how do we really get what we want? So let me just kind of summarize. The listeners need to know that you are like a master at getting what you want. So in your book, Give Yourself Permission, you wrote this paragraph about how you cut out from cardboard, literally a piece of cardboard bigger than your head. And you literally put, 12 boxes on there for each month of the year. And then you put in fluorescent paint marker, you're just like, I want to be a TEDx speaker. I want to be a published author. And you put these massive dreams in each box. And lo and behold, you are a TEDx speaker. You are a published author. So what I really want to know today is, I mean, for example, I put my goals down and I kind of, do my kind of manifestations in the morning and my gratitudes, but I don't get results like that. And I don't think a lot of people do. So I think my first question to you, Cortney, is, I mean, you're amazing at this, at getting what you want. So if you could summarize your secret, what would it be? And then we can dive into it in the episode.
Well, I actually want to backtrack for a second before I answer that question, because one of the really important things that you mentioned a moment ago was that this is not your typical podcast interview where you're talking about fitness and health and diet and all that. And I know from all of the women I've worked with, and I'm talking about thousands at this point, if I look at, stage work and workshops and all that kind of thing, so many of us want to have those things, but our underlying beliefs about ourselves don't coincide with that. They're not coherent. They're not fully coherent. And so if you're working only on the level of diet and exercise, this is why a lot of people don't see the results that they want, is because what they believe to be true for them in any given moment doesn't support either the practice or the continuation of the practice or the long-term sort of shift in, or even short-term, because I've seen those happen as well in my work with people and with myself. So we'll come back to that in a second, but that's just to say how important it is. Sometimes we overlook this aspect. We go outside, we look for the 5 secrets to the 4 ways to get this or that or the other, and we sort of miss the fact that if we're not living that as reality, it's kind of like that idea that the universe doesn't give you what you want, it gives you who you are, right? And so that actually, if I had to summarize, since you asked for a perfect, like a little summary, what is it? That's it. That's it. The distance between who you believe yourself to be and what it is that you think you want, which by the way is also interesting, because if you look at want, like when I cut out that cardboard box, I actually just placed the dream. I just put TEDx speaker, published my first book, all these things that seemed impossible to me. I had no idea how I was going to do any of that. And that was, in January. And there were even things that, ironically, I knew that they weren't set for that time, but I put them in that time for some reason. Like I put that I wanted to spend an entire month in the States, which up until that point, and that was 2017. So that was January of 2017 that I did that. And I hadn't been able to spend that much time in the US in a really long time, just because of work constraints and stuff like that. And so, but I put that for August. And the funny thing was we had all thought we were going to go in July. And so it was really weird that I put it in August. I didn't even know why I put it in August. And then I don't know, all things conspired to us actually leaving Italy to go to the States on the 1st of August. So that was, pretty extreme. Wow. But here's the thing, again, do you believe you are it? Do you know you're already in possession of that which you seek? Because both what you're running away from and what you're racing toward are inside you.
I love that. I love that. Can I just say then, so when you put everything onto your calendar, I mean, how quickly can we expect these things to happen? Like, because in your book, you give the impression that these changes, these goals, all of the things that you wanted, they happened literally overnight. So I believe in the beginning of your book, Give Yourself Permission, you said, people come to me and they say, Court, like, you look healthy, you look really well, you look younger than ever before. And you're just like, well, that just happened overnight. Like, you got into shape overnight. If things seem to kind of change for you overnight, like, I mean, I know that things took time as per the months of the year, but what comments do you have about the time it takes to achieve what you want? Does it happen as soon as you want it, or do some goals take a bit longer?
It absolutely can. And again, this is your own, and this is really hard to hear. Trust me. I mean, you're talking to someone who for a very long time in my life, I often joke that I wasn't type A, I was AAA. I was like a AAA battery. I was like, I got to get there, pedal to the metal, whatever it takes, and whatever there was, right? Because it's always this elusive, some form of what we think is success, right? Instead, what I'm talking to, and it is the secret of all secrets, but it's also right in front of your face. It's like Dorothy with the red slippers, it's like Dorothy had the slippers the whole time, right? She just didn't know it. So that's the thing, she had the way home. And the way home, as much as we don't want to hear it, the way home is inside you. And that's the last place we want to look. And that's the last work we want to do.
Because we all want to look outside. We want to look to say, I want this thing. I want this bag. I want this car. I want this. And we think that's going to bring us joy. But actually what you're saying is you need to go inside, which is hard. Like, it's hard to go inside, right?
It's so hard. It's frightening, actually. And I find it really funny because not only do we think we have to go outside for externalities that sort of validate us in some way, like what you're talking about in terms of the bag or the car or whatever it is, but even in terms of outsourcing our own growth, outsourcing our own understanding of ourselves, right? We go to somebody who's a so-called expert, right? And one of the things that I'm constantly doing in my work, even though I'm considered an expert, is one of the things I always tell people is I say, I don't have your answers. And how scary that is too, to go to someone and be like, oh man, I'm going to you because I think you have it. No, I don't have it. But the beautiful thing is you do. And again, just like Dorothy, let's remember that we're wearing the slippers. And so everything that I think a real educator does is to pull out, is to remind you, in order to educe, this is an archaic word we don't use very often anymore, edure, to bring forth the genius that's within you, right? Because otherwise it'll just be a continual chase outside. So it's, does he have my answers? Does she have my answers? Who's got my answers? And where do I go to get that? And so again, this doesn't mean that certain people, like I said, are not experts in the sense that they can remind you of your own power. And that's what I hope this work does. What I aspire to in my own work is to just constantly remind people, look, you do have the answers. But like you said a moment ago, it's highly uncomfortable to go within. The subject of my first book is Change Starts Within You. Could not believe that book title was not taken at that time. But anyway, it's like, how is this?
It's like the most obvious title.
Once again, yeah, that's yeah, it's wild. But and it was how to unlock the intuition to lead with, or unlock the confidence to lead with intuition, right? Because it's, again, this trusting thing, and we can come back to that in a moment. But what you were saying about going within, it's super scary work. And two of my favorite quotes actually remind me of the import of this. One is from Pascal. I always quote this, which is and I'm paraphrasing, but all of our problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
That's really powerful, because who feels comfortable sitting quietly in a room on their own? Like, right. It's tough to do that. Like, and it shouldn't be, but I mean, for example, myself, I've tried meditation practices. I've tried to stick with it, but I find it difficult to sit there for too long because my mind is racing, and it's just, and it's something that, like, I love self-development. So it's something that I'm working on, and it's something that I know I need to work on. But like you said before, what an expert does is they kind of let you know, they kind of open your world. So someone listening to this might not know that that's something to work on, like sitting on their own, like being quiet and listening to themselves. But now they've heard it, they're like, okay, so maybe this is the next step for me. So that's what an expert's all about. But I love that quote. I think I think I've heard that one before as well.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If it resonates, and I feel like this as well, anything that anyone's saying, like, for example, stuff that, I mean, I love your show. I love everything you do. It's like, if it resonates, there's things that you're like, oh, that resonates. I know that to be true for myself for some reason. That hits home, right? Then bing, you've got it. Then listen, follow. If not, then leave it aside, whatever it is, right? Because again, this is about listening to that. Listening to your innermost guidance does not mean that you're never out in the world. It doesn't mean that you're up in a cave in holding in a cross-legged position, holding a mudra, chanting a mantra. What it means is that you are tuned into that, however you want to call it, that intelligence, that inner voice, that inner knowing. You're tuned into it enough to say immediately, yes, this is attuned to that, whatever I'm hearing, whatever I'm seeing. No, it's not. And we get really distracted, right? And we also get distracted by what's going on. I mean, look at what's happening in the world right now, right? It's so easy to feel just complete overwhelm. And then you're thinking about, oh, and now I'm supposed to sit in a room by myself and solve these problems. Now, there's where I'd like to introduce the second quote, which I normally don't bring up that often, but it's brilliant. And I think it was Tolstoy. He said that everyone thinks of solving the world's problems. No one thinks of solving their own. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to go out there and solve all these things that are just, gosh, difficult, or we could use all sorts of different adjectives for what's going on right now. But the point that I'm trying to make is, look, we're all cells of the same body. Okay. If your cell is in a state of health and well-being, that's contributing to the health and well-being of the entire body. That's where work like yours comes in. That's where work like mine comes in, because like we're really we're devoted. We're like, hey, this is on the level of the microcosm is actually where we're going to be able to exert the greatest amount of change, and therefore the greatest amount of transformation or transmutation, right, is on that level of the microcosm. So I think it's really important for people, instead of rushing out for answers, rushing out for validation, rushing out for this, rushing out for that, really taking that time. And again, it does not mean that you have to sit still. Meditation is
that's
actually,
just one way.
done,
yeah.
Well, when done properly, actually, meditation is you're dancing. It's almost like it'll become the thing you want to do more than anything else. So this is the tricky part, because lots of people think, oh, I have to meditate. No. You have an invitation to meet, to know, to understand, to become aware of this intelligence that lives within you. And when you meet it and you get with it, you really get with it, you feel like you're dancing. You feel like you're just grooving, right? It's that's kind of, to use a dated word, but I love that word, right? It's like you're grooving with it. You don't feel like, oh man, now I got to go meditate for an hour. You're like, yes, now I get to go sit with this intelligence. The more that I've done it, the more that I've understood finally that that's actually the truth behind it, which we completely miss many times in the West.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering, what you're saying is, in order to get what you want, so let's say your goals are, I want to be, I want to lose this number of dress sizes. I want to have this house. I want to have a family. I want to have a partner. In order to reach those goals, you first need to figure out, like, go within and start kind of figuring out what you truly want, which we'll talk about how to do that, and to kind of sit with yourself and kind of groove, as you said, with this intelligence that's within us. So I think that's the part that we'll need to kind of pick out as the episode progresses. But basically, first, I just wanted to come back to you first, because the listeners, if they don't already know who you are, they very well absolutely should, because you've achieved many, many things in your career. So you're a self-development coach to many influential leaders. You're a best-selling author of 2 books, like you said, a TEDx speaker. You've appeared on television and multiple magazine publications. You have a daughter as well, which is lovely. Her name is Gaia, which I think sums you up to a T. How old is she?
She's 14.
She's 14. Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
Gaia, beautiful name. So first of all, for yourself, you seem to achieving what you set out to achieve. Would you say that you still are, or would you say that there's some tricky times, and there are some things that you're struggling with at the moment? Like, would you say that you're on a strong path at the moment, or do you feel like there are some obstacles in your way at the moment? How are you at this moment?
Oh, good Lord. Yes, woman, I struggle. However, I don't think we need to struggle. And I also think there's a huge distinction when you start to realize that you are not the struggle. You are not the suffering or the momentary suffering, right? The temporary despair that you might feel for something is lots of times actually what we're feeling is an evolutionary impulse that's coursing through us. So we feel it, it's an invitation to move as a form, right? Because really, what are we? We're a form that is holding the formless, holding the infinite intelligence that we talk to, that we allude to as well when we're talking about immediate change. Because the formless has no constraints.
Right.
Okay. So our form is holding this formless. You could call it a light, you can call it intelligence. It's the same stuff that's beating your heart, that's conducting the trillions of biochemical reactions occurring in your body this second, right? And every other second. It's that, right? So that's the truth of what we are. But the form has its own sort of, thing going on. So the form, if and most of us do, and I as well, many times in my life have fallen into the trap of believing that I'm the form rather than knowing that I'm the formless.
Like most of us. Yeah.
And so huge distinction comes when, yes, it's like that, there's that Zen master, suppose, I don't even know where this came from, but some Zen master who was asked, what he had reached enlightenment. And I talk about various spontaneous awakenings that have occurred with me over the past years, and in the book and in the second one. Anyway, when he's talking about it, they say, master, what's the difference between now that you're enlightened, right? And the master said, well, before enlightenment, I was depressed. After enlightenment, I'm depressed, right? And I thought that was such a humorous, perfect way of saying, like, at least how I read into it was, there's no longer the identification with this thing that we call depression, which anyway is just a mental construct. But if we want to dig deeper, there's no longer identification with the sensation that's coursing through you. Because this is a huge differentiating point too, that we should consider maybe getting into for your audience, is like the difference between a mental construct and actual physical sensation, so that's another topic if you want. But the point that I'm making is that the moment I do have my challenges, of course I do, but I am able to understand that those challenges are not who and what I am. And that's when you start to really, again, get acquainted with that intelligence we're talking about, that what we say, when you're grooving with that intelligence, okay, when you're really acquainted with it, oh, well, that's what I am. I'm the deathless, limitless, ultimate potential that is encased momentarily in this thing I call the epidermis of my skin.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We think that we are our problems, when the truth is we aren't. And I love the way that you put that. I find it really interesting that you yourself, you were like a rising executive in a Fortune 500 company, before you were doing any of this, before you were a published author, before you were a self-development coach. You were running marathons, and you had all the money that you wanted to live a luxurious lifestyle, which is what a lot of people want for themselves. A lot of people would look at that life and think, that's what I want. I want what she had. What was the defining moment that made you want to change from going from, as we say, successful to going into self-development, which obviously you are incredibly successful now, but at the time you didn't know that? Like, when you made that switch, you were just like, right. you took a jump and you're like, I'm just going to give up everything that I've got and I'm going to make this change and, kind of go into self-development and take this new direction. So did you have a defining moment before you actually did that? Or was it more of a slow burn?
Yeah, well, I actually had many of them. I always say I had multiple cold shower moments. But I start the story, at least in my first book, I start the story there of being what I call miserably successful.
Yeah.
Like, I had all the gold stars, I had all of the accolades and the titles and the whatnots and the family and all the things in the career and all of it. But I realized, whoa, man, like, this is where they tell us we're supposed to want to be. This isn't it. This is not it. And I've heard since then so many of even my friends, close acquaintances, friends, people that I know who have also achieved these so-called, upper reaches of so-called success, who have come to that same conclusion. And actually, so I like that as a starting off point. But I would also encourage people listening to know that, just like a lot of other people that I'm alluding to now, and myself included, it wasn't always that either. I struggled also without money and without the recognition and without the family and without the accolades and without all that. So I think, again, lots of times we think, oh, well, that person kind of just had it and then they did this other thing. No, there has been a whole trajectory behind this of, I started, even in my corporate career, I started as basically a secretary. So working up into be part of the executive management team was a whole thing in and of itself, right? So again, going from that AAA to like, wait a second, this isn't it. This is not fulfillment. And so realizing—
How did you know that? Because so many of us live lives where, for example, we get up in the morning and it's like, oh, this again, like this hamster wheel, this repetition, the same job, the same routine, the same. But you know, we probably can't, many of us can't identify the fact that this isn't it. Or maybe we can, but we don't know, we're just not looking at it. So how did you know that this wasn't it?
Well, I think we can. I think most people can, and most people do, because just like you're saying, most people are like, man, this, you know, they feel that sense of hamster wheel, you know, like I'm running, where am I going? Like, what is this? And they feel that sense of it's like Thoreau, I think, the leading lives of quiet desperation, right? Is, oh, but this is just how it is. And one of the things that I liken it to lots of times is I say, imagine that you had this library just full, chock full, like infinite. I mean, you can't even possibly see all the books in this library, right? But you go into this library every day and you pull out the same book. You could pull out any book you want, but you pull out the same book and you say, this is my book, right? And in that book, you're this character. And that character has a name, it has a best friend, it has a boyfriend or girlfriend or partner or whatever. It has all the things that a well-defined character need to have. It even has its own disposition, right? Its own character disposition of like, oh, I'm typically sad, or, you know, you hear these things like a set point.
Said that
I have
before.
a set point on my happiness or whatever, you know, like all these things. We reinforce all this stuff, right? And then not only do we read from our own book, but we show everybody else our book. So we're like, this is my book. Make sure that you recognize me as this character.
Learn this book.
That I'm playing. Okay. Because otherwise, how are we gonna, you know, and to a certain degree, I say, great, we are in this, I don't want to get too esoterical here. I don't want to, you know, spin some Carlos Castaneda on us, but what we do is, unfortunately, we really we tie ourselves to this character portrayal rather than recognizing, and this harkens back to what I was talking about a minute ago, which is, you're not the form, you're not the body. You know, if you really believe that the largest organ on your body, right, which is your skin, is where you begin and end, you know, there's something more. So it's really recognizing, like, yes, I have a body, okay, I have a mind, I have these things, but the truth of who I am goes far, far, far beyond that. And the truth of who I am actually can at any point choose a different character, because guess what? I'm not the character. Now, this is really trippy stuff.
It is really trippy. And I feel like this is the absolute root of getting what you want, right?
It is.
Finding your authentic self.
Well, you don't want anything. You don't even want anything anymore. Right, it's kind of like you have evolutionary impulses, because as an individual form, right? As a character, okay, as any given character, your character is going to have these evolutionary impulses. It's going to have these plays that it's playing in the play. And those are fun. And those you get to watch unfold. And if you can fully sit back and watch this character unfold, you will experience such bliss and peace that even in those moments where you might feel like there's a struggle, you will see almost like the flower coming up from the soil, you know, the seed turning into the flower, right? It's almost like you feel that blooming, which requires some efforting, it requires some nurturing, it requires this thing, but you realize kind of this overall sort of macro reality, if that makes sense.
I love that. And it reminds me of a book that I've read several times over. I believe it is, it's by Don Miguel Ruiz. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. You probably know, actually. Did I get it right?
Yeah. He's the 4 agreements, right?
I've read the 4 agreements, the 5 agreements, like the mastery of love. Like, I've read a lot of his great work, and there's this one chapter in one of his books, I can't remember which one it is, but he basically said that your character, imagine you're in a cinema and you're watching your life on the screen. And now imagine that, you know, there are other people watching the same film of who you are, but they're just interpreting your story different. And so basically the story is all about how you perceive yourself one way, your partner perceives you a different way from how you perceive yourself. Your child perceives you differently from your partner and from you. And it's everyone has a completely different perception. So the way you see yourself and the way you see the world is not real, because everyone has a completely different perception of the experience and who you are. Which I absolutely love, and that really drives it home. And I really love when you say that this is just a character, and that means that if you feel that you're not quite, because sometimes it feels like you're not being yourself, you're not living the life that you should be living. So for example, as being a mum, I'm the mother of 2 young kids, so at the moment I feel so far from who I am. I'm just like, this is like, I feel like I'm just the cliche, like I'm doing everything for them, and I'm not really focusing on myself, and I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I like. I don't know how to play. Like your book talks about, the chapters in your book are actually like how to play, how to figure out what you love, and they're so basic. But we forget, like, I don't know how to play, like I don't know how to figure out exactly what I love. And we struggle with those things, but they're really key things to know how to kind of get back to who you are, your authentic self. I mean, I really love those chapters. Can you speak on any of those? So like how to play, for example. I mean, why do we struggle so much with play, and why is it so important?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's our conditioning, right? It's our conditioning. Because if you look at any young child, I mean, it's very rare, extremely rare to find a young child who doesn't know inherently how to play and who doesn't inherently fill their day with play. Right? They wake up and they're just like, what's going to happen today? Right? Like, and there's a great line in the Bible, unless you become, as I'm paraphrasing, I think, but unless you become as children, again, as children, you shall not inherit the kingdom. We are trained out of play. We are trained out of it. We know it. We know that play is essential, but we are trained out of it, and then we train ourselves out of it. Now, this is another thing that I talk about a little bit in the book, is like, okay, up until the point that it's societal conditioning, there's still a little bit of a chance of breaking free. When it becomes your own conditioning and you can no longer differentiate yourself from the conditioning,
that's the struggle.
That's when the game is over for most of us. For most of us, that's when the game is over. That's when you're just like, oh, I am the character. I am the character, and nothing can challenge that. So before I get into play, let me go back to that for a second, because this is really trippy and it's hard to accept. And there might only be like 1% out of 1,000 listening to this who actually get it. But if you get it, or even if you come back to this piece to get it, which is, all right, I've done a lot up until this point to defend this character. I've done a lot up to this point to reinforce this character. I've done a lot up to this point to build this character. I have a lot invested in this character. A lot. I have a lot invested. And if I change character, oh goodness, what's going to happen to those perceptions that you were talking about a moment ago of how people perceive me? Now, here we also get into real shaky ground, because that's where we touch on very primordial, not just needs, but life, like existence, right? Our fears around existence, right? Because if people don't accept me, what does that mean? It means banishment. It means ostracism. It means I literally, in a lot of cultures, a lot of, up until not that long ago in our history, it meant you die. Okay, so we literally equate the death of the character with the death of the being. Can you imagine? I mean, that is what we're talking about here. So you really got to take a step back. I mean, if you really, really want to go where we're talking about, you got to take a step back. It is not for the faint of heart. Most people, like I said, will listen to this. They might get some things. I certainly hope everyone who does, but very few will actually say, I'm going to challenge it and see what's on the other side. And that's where play lives. That's where this play lives. But I'll tell you, I personally had, because I'm thick-headed, girl. I am thick-headed. Like, anyone who knows me would probably say, oh, no, you know,
give me some of that.
Yeah. I'm thick-headed. I'm like, I think it's this way. It's got to, and it'll take a lot, right? So for me, many times in my life and my career, I had hit that wall so many damn times before I was like, damn, this hurts. I am just done hitting this wall. I just can't hit this wall anymore. And what happened after I stopped all that efforting, I stopped trying so hard. Miraculously, what happened is I would say I even got a little flippant, but I got goofy. I was like, recently, I swear to God, this is really funny.
Yeah,
Because I like to think that I have a lot of careers left in me in this lifetime. And so one of them, like, I want to be a stand-up comedian at some point. I'm like, I have got to do stand-up comedy. I have such respect
I'll
for
be
stand-up
there. I
comedians.
friggin' love stand-up.
You are
I'll
so
be there.
coming. I'm nailing this. I'm starting to collect my own jokes. So, but I think they're funny. Let's see. I'm not going to do any of that. Don't worry. God bless. I'm not going to do any of that here today.
But we'll do this.
But the point that I'm trying to make, right, is that we have got to get playful, and it is very hard if we've been on this track of this hyper conditioning around do, and you have to get all these things done, and you have to take care of everyone. And then, as you know, to your point, you're a mom, you've got to do this, you got to do this and this other thing. If you will dare first to challenge some of those definitions that you're using to define yourself, and then you will dare to get playful around them, magic emerges, period.
What do you mean? I need to go into this a bit more. So let's say I see myself as like a mum, like a stay-at-home mum, because that's basically my life at the moment. I stay at home and I work from the desk, and you know, I try every opportunity to get out, but you know, basically I'm at home, and I wake up in the morning. Sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm here again. I'm alone with my child. Like it's tough. So let's say I'm a mum, and then you said if I challenge that, then play is there. So what do you mean by that? Because I'm kind of struggling with that. Like, how do I challenge that?
That's a great question. Yeah. That's such a great question. First of all, being a mom is the hardest job in the entire world. Like, there is no harder job. Okay. So it is very hard. And when it becomes the difference between it being hard though, and being something that feels a suffering, let's say, is because it is hard. It's inherently hard. You are responsible for the well-being of another human being to the extent to which you can be responsible for that. Because again, there's an extent to which we can be responsible for that. And it is a huge responsibility. So that aside, there is this place where we start to question all the rules, identifications, and definitions we have around being a mom.
Right, like I should stay home. I should be boring. I should stay home. I shouldn't wear makeup.
Voila,
I don't have time.
Voila. Yes, exactly. You've hit them all. You've hit so many of them right there. Like, think of the difference between a mom who gets up and, you know, brings their little child, like, hey, let's do a makeup party. Let's like do our, you know, here's the funny thing. The ways you're going to challenge the definitions that have been set into your psyche are your ways, right? Of course, you know, there can be some ideas, some promptings and things like that. But the main point is, today I'm going to take out a different book. I've been taking out this same book that says moms are boring, moms don't wear makeup, moms don't do their hair, moms get upset about the little things, mom tell you what to do, what not to do. Like, for example, there's so many things I want to tell my 14-year-old daughter not to do. Like my instinct would be like, don't do this, don't do that, watch out here, watch out there. And I literally so many times had to bite my tongue to be like, she's growing, she's learning her things. You be the best example you can be as a human being.
All you can do is work on you.
Yeah. As you can be. Because I mean, I'm going to make my own mistakes, right? But as I can be. And then you let her watch that and see what happens there. You see, that was me challenging the social constructs. When I got a divorce, I had been married for 18 years. I was scared out of my wits to leave that structure of that marriage. I was scared of my wits. But now this is for me, this is not for everybody, but for me, I knew intrinsically, inherently, again, listening to intelligence, that's what I needed to do. And I also needed to do it in my own way. So again, taking out different books, not what everybody says about divorce, whatever, however, again, even that word, there's so much stigma behind it.
I can imagine what you had to go through, like going through that, what the labels that divorce comes with.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, I can imagine what you had to fight through within yourself to actually come out the other side and be like, look, I don't have any of those labels of a, you know, divorcee. Like, I can imagine that.
Yeah. Like, for example, every once in a while now, someone will say to me when they find out my marital status or lack thereof, they'll say, congratulations. And I'm like, thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
I love that reframe.
Right. But here, exactly. And therein lies the crux, right? Because we have a frame around it. That was a perfect word, to reframe, or even to not frame at all. Because here's the thing, we have this frame, and the frame says, in the frame, like, sets these confines around this human experience. And so we say, this is what a mother is. And there's only one kind, like, and she has to be self-sacrificing, and she has to be this, and she has to be that, you know?
Yeah.
I tell you, I just got the most beautiful letter from my daughter the other day. I mean, it's really, really moving for me. But I remember, and she talks about all the ways in which, and a 14-year-old girl who writes you a letter like that, I mean, that's really saying something about who she is and what this experience has been for us so far. But I remember this past summer, we were sitting around a table with a bunch of people, and they were like, oh, is there anything, like, this is a very kind of embarrassing, but she was like, but I have to say it. I have to say it so that anyone listening can hear this, because I feel like this is kind of what I'm driving at. Someone at the table, we were at my niece's wedding shower, her shower for her wedding. And I was almost going to say baby shower. No, she is not pregnant yet. Oh my God. Her wedding shower. And we were sitting around the table, and someone said, oh, your mom's so great, like all this stuff. You must really love her. She said something like, yeah, my mom really is. She said, but sometimes she can be really selfish. And I was like, yeah. And I just was like, yeah, sometimes I can be selfish. I've been selfish in the past.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And I want you to be selfish when you need to be selfish, when you need to protect your self-interests, like of not disintegrating or not blowing up, but actually taking care of yourself.
Yes.
And you see, there we go. We have had centuries, millennia. I mean, we've had centuries of women literally being so compromised. It's like, no, first of all, I don't want her to experience that in her life. And you know what I mean? But here's the thing. I'm not saying my way is right, or anyone else's way is right or wrong, for that matter. What I'm saying is, find your own way. Like, let it really be your own way. And then that play that you were talking about, it will start to naturally emerge. Like, for example, okay, for instance, I don't know, maybe in your case, it's like putting on a little bit of makeup or whatever. Gosh, you're stunning. So it's fun to play with that form. So it's like, oh, okay, so maybe with my children, this is what we're going to do. Like, my daughter, she does the most amazing eyeliner. I'm like, okay, you have got to help me, because I can't do eyeliner at all.
Neither
like, to
can
save
I.
my life. It ends up all over my face.
Yeah.
And
Smudged and like start
help
again.
me, you know what I mean? Help me with it. Here's what I'm saying is, in all of that, and in the story and sharing that personal bit, there is just this. Like, we don't have to accept that that's the only character we can play. We can literally start taking out and trying on different costumes, because it's just a character. And here's the thing, you're here today, you're gone tomorrow. Have fun. Like, it literally doesn't make sense not to. We don't have all that much time in the form, and we are here to enjoy it. We are not here to suffer. We are not here to suffer. And many people will have a big problem with that.
It feels like we should. It feels like this to kind of rise in life and to be happy, there needs to be some sort of suffering going on. Like, and suffering meaning not discomfort, because discomfort is good, but suffering is when you're sitting with it for way too long, and that's when it kind of turns into suffering. And it's like, I even have that feeling. I feel like it should be hard. For example, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about how I feel about money, because I was researching your work, and I was watching some of your videos, and you were talking about money. And I know one of your chapters is about money. And I was just like, what are my beliefs about money? Because I never really think about it. And my belief is 100% that it should be hard to achieve money. Like, you have to struggle, you have to suffer. And that's when you eventually come into money. Like, that's my belief.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, I've never really thought about that before. So, I mean, I'm sure you get this all the time, people coming to you saying, they believe struggle is the way to succeed. And it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. And I know that in myself, but it's so hard to accept and to really embody. It's hard to embody it, like I'm learning though.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, if you hit on the exact right term is embody, because when you embody the spirit of wealth, which by the way, lots of times, and this might be striking or kind of hard to hear a little bit, which is money is almost often linked to how much love as well that we feel we deserve, or our overall sense of deservedness.
That's right. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like love is a big part of that. Like, is it available to me? Is it always available to me? I know, for instance, I had such limiting beliefs around money for a really
Did
long
you?
time. I had
I don't believe that, but I'm always comforted when you say it.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I had debilitating. I really did. I lived in scarcity for a really long time. And I did before I got these lessons that I talk about in the book. And I go through point by point, like these are the things that I had to understand about wealth in order to be what I am today. And I really mean be, because when you said embodiment, that's what it is. You become it. Wealth, just like anything else, is a consciousness. Your body has the form it has because your consciousness is mirroring, or I would say your body is kind of a snapshot of wherever your consciousness is in any given moment. That's why I've experienced some spontaneous changes, because my consciousness has shifted so radically spontaneously that I've had spontaneous changes also in my body. But that can apply to anything. It can be applied to wealth. It can be applied to anything, because again, it's just a consciousness. A leaf is a consciousness. A river is a consciousness. It's all if we get real esoterical, it's all the same, but these are representations, I should say. They are representations of consciousness, of different aspects of the same consciousness. Okay. So in that way, when you've got that, when you've really got it, not a cognitive understanding, but an experiential knowing. And this is why I often tell people, look, if something resonates with you, whether it's in a book, in a podcast, or wherever else, go back until it becomes your own, because then that's when your consciousness will reflect that. It won't reflect it if you keep going on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And hold on, let me get some more candy. Let me get some more candy. Let me get some more candy. The way you actually integrate and assimilate the information is to really have it become part of who you are. In other words, the embodiment piece you were talking about a moment ago. And that's true wealth. And wealth extends far beyond any material acquisition.
So would you say that that's when you should feel like, let's say you're seeking wealth, to embody it would mean you feel it, you feel all the feelings you would feel if you were to be wealthy. So let's say, what does wealth afford you? So freedom and, feeling like, freedom, let's put it that. So feeling free. So what is stopping someone from feeling that now? And by the time when you embody that and you feel free, that's when the material stuff kind of falls into place. But as long as you feel free, you've already got what you wanted. You've already got the wealth, for example. Is that what you mean?
That is as well definitely a huge part of it. Okay. Because one of the things you hit on here, which is supremely important, is why do I want that? Yeah. Why do I want X amount of money? What is it that, because there's so many people that'll be like, I want 10 million. Okay, fine. That's completely arbitrary. Why do you want that? And then they'll say, oh, so I can get this thing and that thing and this other thing. And you say, okay, great. Well, why do you want this thing and that thing and the other thing? And you just keep digging. And I did this once actually in a crowd of 1,000 women. I had 1,000 female entrepreneurs in front of me. And this one woman, she said something like, I just need $1 million in the bank or whatever. And I was like, okay, let's dig here for a second.
Yeah.
And now what we came to with her, really interesting that you got there immediately for you, which is freedom, which is fantastic. Because that's the vein that you stay with. Okay. But with her, what it boiled down to, and it was almost heartbreaking. And I think most of us there were in tears, because what it came down to with her was, I'll feel like I'm worthy.
Mm. Mm.
And by golly, how many things we want so we can feel we're worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciation, approval, accolades, titles, jobs, cars, houses. Guess what? You're worthy.
Mm.
Jim Carrey said this brilliant thing, and then I'll move on to talk about freedom in a second, and also dig a little deeper into your question. Jim Carrey said this brilliant thing in a commencement speech. He said, how tricky is this ego that it would tempt us with the promise of something we already possess?
Oh, goosebumps.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Right?
Yeah.
Truth bombs, right? He was talking about immortality. I'm talking about everything. And also, I'm not singling out the ego. Attention. The ego is fabulous. The ego is the character. The ego is the smaller case I. It is the smaller case self. Okay, it's the lowercase self. The ego is your friend if you let it be. Just like the mind is your friend if you actually learn how to train it and work with it and understand how to, think, which unfortunately most of us are not trained in that at all. It's also something I go into the book. But how tricky is this, that it would tempt us with the promise of something we already possess? To your point, you already possess it. You already are wealthy. If you are listening to this right now, especially, but even if you're not, here's the thing. This is and it's one of the principles of wealth that needs to be understood, is that all the riches you could ever desire are inside of you. Every possible thing that you could ever desire is inside of you right now, active. You're going to stoke the flames of that, or are you going to go chasing all around searching for something that it was like the red slippers that you were wearing the whole time? That's the question. It's the only question insofar as this is concerned. And yet it is the hardest one to actually even believe, because we're like, but we've been so hyper trained to think that if we, we've got to work hard and we've got to meet this, person, or we've got to do this thing or whatever. And it's like, no, actually the wealth is inside you. Now, here's the thing, and it can get a little tricky, is when you realize that, you stop chasing after a specific goal. Now that can feel very scary, because we were taught that we were supposed to chase after goals. We're supposed to be ambitious.
Yeah.
We're supposed to go out and get things. We're supposed to make it happen. We're supposed to.
Yeah.
That's actually a lie. That is actually an untruth.
That's challenging. That's challenging
so
for me.
Challenging.
That's challenging for a lot of people.
Girl.
I feel like, who am I without my goals? Like, if I don't have goals, I will get nowhere. That's my belief.
Tell me. I know.
Is that
because
wrong?
we were all, well, here's the thing. Here's what I will tell you about it. Goals in and of themselves are not the problem. Okay. Without a vision, the people perish. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any. The difference is this. When you say my sense of worth, my sense of achievement, my sense of wealth, my sense of whatever depends upon me reaching that goal, you've missed the mark.
Right.
Period. And that's what almost all of us do. It's funny that actually the word to sin simply means to miss the mark. Yeah, just means to miss the mark. You didn't do anything immoral or anything like that. You just missed the mark. Okay. You're an archer and you missed the mark. Okay.
So it's okay to have a vision. It's okay to have goals. So like you had on the 12 months of the year, you sprawled, you want to be a TEDx speaker. Like, they were goals. But what you did was, you didn't say, but I have to do that, otherwise I failed. Or like, you didn't have that belief. Right. I imagine that you embodied it. You were like, I am a TEDx speaker before you even got there. I am a published author. I can imagine that all of those feelings that would have come with those achieving those things, you were embodying often. And that's what led them to come to you. Is that right?
Well, let me be a little more precise, because I think actually it's not even like, because again, even there, it feels a little bit like a striving. Because it's like, oh, I got to pretend, you know what I mean? We have this thing like fake it till you make it kind of thing, or like,
so even
visualize, and like all those
it.
things are great.
That becomes a
Science
job
backs that
as
up. They're
well.
great, but it's, I mean, all those things, fantastic. I've done all of them. There's nothing wrong with any of them. In fact, it's a very sort of classical physics approach to change. It does work. It just takes a lot longer and it's much more arduous. So here's what I'm suggesting instead. And it's going to be very hard to hear. The hardest possible thing you could imagine to hear. Like literally, there's going to be nothing, like I said, when I was saying 1%, maybe less is actually going to be able to hear this. Okay. Maybe less.
Hit me.
Okay. Hit me with your best shot. I relaxed. I just relaxed. There were these beautiful, juicy evolutionary impulses that I felt that I would want it, but I just relaxed. Now, let me give you a very specific example of this, because people are going to be wondering, okay, what do you mean you just relax?
Like Netflix or like,
no. Great question. I am not talking about binging on Netflix. Thank you for immediately clarifying. No, here's what I'm talking about. And there's a little two part to this. So relaxation and then intrinsically motivated action. Okay. So I'm going to talk about relaxation first, although they work hand in hand and they're not separate and they're not sequential. Relaxation means things like this. I wanted to be a TEDx speaker. I had no idea how to do that. I had no idea who to contact. There was no one in my network. Well, even if there was, there probably was, but I wasn't looking into them. I'm not like, I'm not that person who will call you up and be like, hey, I need this thing. I'm more just like, oh no, I don't want to ask, whatever kind of thing. Shy about that stuff. So there probably was, but I didn't think about that at all. I went to this event. Okay. I went to an event. It was hosted by this consortium of universities where I do some teaching for them. I'm a professor part-time at some of the times. I haven't done that job in a while, but I've done some teaching for some big 10 US universities and in the MBA programs. And I went to this event. It was around Christmas time. So I guess, that's really interesting. So I must have done that cardboard box thing like right before this or something. I want to say, well, anyway, I have a very strange relationship with time. So I want to say that it was like around Christmas time for some reason. But anyway, I went to this event and I was talking to someone. I was having a fairly deep conversation with someone. You know how these things are most of the time. People do this thing that they call networking. Well, I am not good at that. So I connect deeply with people, and I will, maybe if I go to an event, connect deeply with one or two people. And those will be the one or two people that I pretty much probably still hang out with at this point in my life. They're spread all across the world, but they're people that I connected with genuinely. So I'm at this event, and this woman who is instead a amazing quote unquote networker, the person who does meet everyone in the room and does have all the connections and does, is able to connect all the people. She comes up to me and she says, listen, Court, the people from the TEDx committee are over there, and I really think you should talk to them. Now, I was in the middle of a conversation with someone, and they were telling me some pretty serious stuff about their lives. So I said, well, thank you very much. I'm talking to and such and such. She was right in front of me. I was like, she and I are having a conversation right now. So, maybe I'll get a chance to meet them later. She says, oh, okay. And she walks away. And then about 5 minutes later, she walks up. She's like, Court, I'm really sorry, but we're going to leave this break pretty soon. And then it's going to be the end of the event. And you're probably not going to have a chance to talk to them anymore. And I really want them to meet you. And my friend said, hey, just go meet him. I said, no, we're having a conversation. It's fine. This is what I mean. I'm totally relaxed. I don't need anything from you.
That's it.
I'm going to repeat that. I don't need anything from you.
That's what you mean. Yes.
I don't need anything even from life. I trust that it's taking me where I need to go. Okay. This is what I mean when I say relax. Okay. It's a big part of what I mean. So anyway, funny thing is, I say again to her, it's cool. I'll meet them at some other point. This has been a great event. Thank you so much. I continue talking to this woman. Next thing I know, the entire entourage of like the TEDx people come up and they're like, hey, we need to talk to you. We've heard about you from multiple people at the event. We need to have a conversation. Okay. Then I had multiple conversations with them, ended up, being able to do TEDx and all that other stuff. But you see what I'm getting at? And it's a very big distinction. It's like saying, guess what? I know it's really hard. And by the way, it isn't. And I'm going to get to that in a minute if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But we've trained ourselves to believe it's really hard to trust.
Yes, to trust.
Life is working out for us.
Yeah.
Okay. that these things are happening for us. We've trained ourselves to believe, no, 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 I have to work hard and I can't really trust that things are going to work on their own. I've got to make them work and I've got to figure this thing out. Okay. We've been trained that way.
Yeah.
Right. However, that is absolutely, well, we'll talk about that in a moment if you want, because that's a really important and key point. But anyway, when I relaxed into that trust, okay, I relaxed into it, and then intrinsically understanding what's important right now, right in front of me. What's important right now, right in front of me, is this person sharing something personal about their life. That's what's important. You know, there's a great poem. Gosh, I don't know if it was Emerson or whatever, but it's if even one life is breathed easier because I have lived. That is to have succeeded. Now, I'm not saying that that person necessarily went off and was breathing easier, but what I am saying is be with what you're with right now. And sometimes that might be your child, you know, and just be like, oh, like, wow, I wasn't with you. Hold on, come back. I wasn't here. Oh, I wasn't here. Here I am. Here I am. Here I am. Now the trust piece, I don't know if you want to get into that, but that is pretty crucial.
I mean, the trust piece is really crucial because I feel like I feel like I need to have a goal and I need to make it happen. So I need to think about all of the things I need to do. And then sometimes that goes against me because then I get stressed about it. I'm like, oh, I didn't do that thing I was supposed to do to get to my goal. And then I start to feel like a failure. And this can go for anything. So for example, if someone's, you know, wanting to get into shape, or if someone's wanting to, you know, be healthy, super healthy, you know, they set that goal and then they're like, right, I've got to go to the gym. I've got to eat well. And they're just like, go, go, go. And then if they miss the gym, they're like, oh my God, I'm such a fat slob. Like, I feel so guilty. And then they fall off their diet and then they feel like they, you know, then they might binge after that because they feel so bad. And it's that difficulty and it's that struggle. And, but it's crazy because we believe, even after we've all experienced that, we still believe that we have to go through that process in order to get what we want, when it's failed many, many times over for many of us, right? But to then take your advice and to say, the way that I interpret it is, you say, okay, you have your desires, you have the things that you'd like, but then almost like not forget about it, but just say, yep, it's coming, like trust that it will come, and then kind of focus on what's in front of you, like what's most important. Do what you enjoy, play, have fun, you know, love, you know, just be your best self in that moment, whether it includes that goal or not. And then that's a good vibe to attract that thing. Is that right?
Yes. And here's the thing. You are designed for your desires. You are intrinsically, inherently designed for your desires. So just like you're looking at a bulb of a flower, I'm not a gardener, I wish I was, but you know, say you're looking at that bulb. Now this furry little thing, you're not going to think that some flower is going to spring out of that if you put it in the dirt and you give it some water, but it does. You are designed for your desires. So you don't have to toil and spin.
That's so reassuring.
As the Bible said, we don't have to toil and spin.
That reassures me no end. Yeah.
Right. We exactly to your point, and I love the way you put it, you show up with your best self. So again, once we recognize this, that we have that within us, we can do this thing that I'm talking about of relaxing and allowing the evolutionary impulses are going to continue to come to us. Okay. So as we continue to nourish that desire, we will get more insights into what kind of water it needs, what kind of soil it might need, what kind of things that we might be able to lend to it. But you see, there's not that grasping and searching and trying. It becomes an effortless effort. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Effortless effort.
So like effortless effort.
I mean, it's not like you're just sitting there doing nothing, watching Netflix. It's like you are, you are living your life, and something comes along that sparks your interest. And then so
Yeah.
you take that opportunity and then, that leads on to this next thing. I think I'm going to explore this. So you are doing things that are working towards the things that you want, but they're just happening for you, and you're relaxed about them, and you're curious about them, and like you're having fun with it.
Right. Exactly. You start to have fun with it. I think that's another really important thing. And it is very hard because, as I said earlier, we've been trained to not, we've been trained to not have fun. We've been trained to, precisely to your point, to think it has to be hard and we have to work. But here's the thing, again, it's such an irony, because the more we open up to the fact that we already are it, the more it just spontaneously bubbles up in this playful expression. So we become again as children, and everything that then is happening becomes just something very that we can be very open to and just enjoy real time in that moment. And it is a totally different, it's a totally different spin and take on life, but it is actually what starts to calm the nervous system down so that we can be an energetic match, to the point you made a little bit earlier, for those evolutionary desires to just be. They're just there. They're there. We know this even from the science. There are limitless potentials. And it's in the moment that we actually put our relaxed awareness, our attention on them, that they come into being. We know this from from all our sciences. Like if I could come up and talk to you about very specific things in neuroscience or quantum physics that illustrate this point perfectly and beautifully.
Whatever you pay
But you don't
attention
need,
to becomes. So I need that you made reference, I think it was in one of your books, one of your podcasts. You love quantum physics, so do I. I love stuff like that. That just blows my mind. But when it's interesting because even a ray of light, it can be a wave or it can be a particle, but which form it takes depends on what experiment is being done on it at the time. So if it's being observed, then it becomes, this form. If it's another experiment, then it becomes another form. So basically it becomes whatever the observer wants it to be at the time. So it's kind of the same thing, like, whatever you put your attention on comes into being somehow in its kind of closest, in the best way that it can at that time. Yeah.
Right. It's a wavicle. It's that, a quantum physicist attempt at humor. It's a wavicle, right? The wave is a particle at the same time. It's a wave up into the point of observation, to your point, i.e. attention, at which point it takes on material form. Right now, we're talking about scientists in a lab studying subatomic quanta, but really what we're talking about is life. Because even if we look at the way our brains work and the reticular activating system in our brain that is constantly searching for the answers to the questions or to the things that are predominantly in our awareness and that we're predominantly giving our attention to, it's the exact same principle. And again, we could go through various different sciences and various different discoveries that illustrate the same point. But the point is, here's the point ultimately. Again, if you look at it in terms of the library and the book you're taking out, it's like we could potentially be taking out and taking on, trying on all these different characters. It's like, when are you going to give yourself permission to play? You're in the greatest spectacle that was ever put on, ever. Why not actually play in it, in a way that you're consciously aware of, rather than, you've taken on this character and you forget that you're the character, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It's great because you're a great example of this, because the fact that you're like, I'm just thinking of doing stand-up comedy one day, and I was a professor, and a lot of people would think, we should be on one path, like we should be doing one thing, we should be one certain person in that we visualize in our mind. And who's to say that's the case? Like, nobody has said that. And like, it's so funny how we put ourselves in these categories. Like you said, we have this character book and like we stick with it. And it's like, if we step outside of that, it's scary. People might be upset. You might make some people uncomfortable. And that's what makes it scary. But if you, like you said, and what you did, if you face that and if you face those challenges, then you kind of unlock the door to being whatever it is you want to be, which is really great. But I do have a question for you. So how do we know what is our real selves and what is what we think other people think we should be? So for example, in your case, the TEDx speaker, How did you know that that was your goal and not somebody else's?
Such a good
Because this is a
question.
tough
Such a
one.
good
Like, I struggle
question.
with this. I'm like, is this really me? Do I really want this? Or is this because this is what I think people should be doing?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Here's my best litmus test for this at this point in my life is I say it's kind of like you have this energy source within you. You could call it a light, you could think of it as an intelligence, whatever. When you feel it sort of expanding, when you feel this sense of expansion and expansiveness, for me, that is an indication advance. When you feel it, like there's a tightening around it, there's a gripping, there's a searching, there's a grabbing, there's a, I gotta get this thing, otherwise you will actually feel that as you're almost like your light diminishing. And that for me is slow down, probably retreat, but definitely slow down. And the only way to really get in touch with that and be aware of it is, as I was saying before, is to really start to groove with this. In other words, start to dance with this intelligence, start to understand this intelligence a lot more. Start to make it almost like your most important friend. You know, it's like, oh man, because at the end of the day, it is. At the end of the day, it is the one thing that won't forsake you. It is the one thing that's going to consistently lead you to hit the mark rather than miss the mark.
And this brings you back to that quietness you were talking about as well.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it, right? You need that quietness in order to sense that expansion or the compression that you're talking about.
Right. And it's an inner quietude, which you can have even in the midst of thousands of people. You know, you don't need to be sitting in a room on your own. Right. You could be out in the woods. You could be on a walk. You could be, you know, but you have this sense of like, whoa, wait, I got it. And then here's the other thing. Sometimes it's gonna actually be something that is externally motivated. You're gonna feel like you got to get this thing. Guess what? That's okay too. That's okay too, because that's all part of what's leading you again to have this awareness. Oh, that wasn't it. Oh, that wasn't it. Oh, that wasn't it. When I gave my TEDx talk, actually, I was at a very different time in my life. Like I was not anywhere near where the person I am now. I was a completely different being. There were certain things that I understood at that point. There were a lot of things that I didn't. A lot of what I'm sharing today, I did not understand. There was still very much within me the idea that I needed to, even though I had this spontaneous like realization that I could relax, that these things could come, etc. There was still very much a vein within me that, luckily, as far as my work is concerned, is completely, I think, eradicated at this point, which is, what do other people think? And I'm telling you, sister, I had to do a lot of work to pull that one out of my psyche. Because that was so embedded, like, you know, you got to show something, prove something, you got to get up there, you got to do this thing, you know, all these things. And so even though, like I said, I had understood a lot of principles, there were a lot of things that were really lacking in my awareness. And I still remember this, you know, idea that I just had to get it right. I had to nail this thing. And at that time too, I had so many other things going on in my life, you know. So it's funny, a good friend of mine, she and I were talking after, we said we need to have the talk about the talk, because there's a lot of rigor in the TEDx. And she's been an advisor to Nelson Mandela and Barack Obama. So she's like, she should not be stressed out on a TEDx stage, but we both were when we gave our TED Talks. And we said, it's very much that sense of like, you know, it brings you straight back into that performance. Now, here's another key point that can be really helpful is like, are you performing or are you playing? Are you performing or are you playing? Because if you're performing, I'm telling you, you're probably going to miss the mark every time. If you're playing, you're pretty likely to hit it or come pretty darn close. Because that's when that again, that's our nature, but it also means that we're not stressing ourselves out about how it comes to pass. We're just letting it come to pass. Does that make sense?
It does. And so I'm just thinking, because obviously this is like a health podcast, and I know that a lot of my listeners just want to be in shape and they just want to look and feel fabulous. So for someone who, let's say, wanted to lose some weight or just wanted to get into their best shape, what sort of steps would you recommend they do in light of what we've just discussed? So in this particular situation, what would you recommend?
So here's the thing, you can only really fully do what you believe about yourself. If you believe about yourself that you are you choose healthy options for what you eat, you look at the labels, you do those kinds of things. Again, your character, please be mindful, your character does those things. Your character goes to the gym or doesn't. Like personally, I don't go, I'm physically fit, but I don't go to the gym. But my character doesn't believe that I have to go to the gym to be physically fit.
Whereas someone else's character is like, I
uses...
have to go to the gym, I can't miss it.
Right.
And that's mad.
Right, exactly.
Like how different we are. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also beautiful because it shows you all these other possibilities and ways that, it shows you that it's not prescriptive. That there's not this 5-point step thing that you can do, but rather it is, who are you? What kind, if that person, and be mindful, because again, person is a character. The word person actually comes from persona. They were the masks that they wore in ancient Greek theater. That's the origin of the word person. So I'm just be mindful when I say person, I am talking again about your character. This kind of person does this. So ask yourself, okay, if I desire that character formation, okay, if I desire for the formless to express itself that way through this form, what kinds of things does that kind of person do? And then what I want to do is I want to do them right out of the gate. What do I mean by that? I mean, get up and you got like a few seconds, just get going. Do that thing right then. It will become your new habit formation. Now, there's loads of stuff on habit formation that I think is really worthwhile if someone's looking how to change that. But the first and foremost is really, what kind of decisions is that person that I am becoming? What kind of decisions does she or he make? Okay, that in and of itself, and then making them right away. So for example, for me, my highest interest right now is connecting with this intelligence, like I said. So when I get up in the morning, that's the very first thing I do. I do it before I brush my teeth. I do it before I make my bed. I do it before I go for a run or a walk. I do it before everything. It's like I sit down and I get with that. I dance with it. Okay, that's my thing. That's my thing. It's for me. That's what my form wants to do. Okay, if paramount right now in your interest is the physical, which is great. Right out of the gate, you get up, make it easy for yourself. Have the trainers by the door, have the outfit that you're going to put on and ready, have it. And I would say the other thing that I would highly suggest is don't test the depths of the water with both feet. It was Warren Buffett, I think, who said something along those lines. Like, you don't need to jump in to see how deep it is. Okay, just start experimenting. And I would say slower, because then you might even want to, because you might be like, all right, I want to get fit. I'm going to go out tomorrow and I'm going to hit the gym for an hour. That doesn't last very long because it's very hard to make that transition for your body and your mind. So testing it bit by bit of being like, okay, no, I am going to dedicate myself to just these 5 minutes. Like, for instance, I'll tell you, I had huge, now people will struggle with this, but and again, this is where, this is a lot of other things come into this example, but I found these 5 fitness exercises in this Reader's Digest of all places. Do you remember Reader's Digest? Reader's Digest, like an old book. It was an old book, old Reader's Digest thing that I had. And it was like 5 exercises from this military expert. And I started doing them every morning. That was it. That was my form of exercise. I did these 5 exercises. They took me less than 5 minutes. I don't think they were these exercises. I think it was, I am just going to commit to this thing for my body. It's 5 minutes. Like right now, I'll tell you, when I'm finished my practice of connecting with that energy, that intelligence, I will normally do, it depends. It varies. Like I might do some yoga push-ups. I might do some weights, whatever, but it's like a quick thing. I'm not like, oh, now I have to go hit the gym for an hour. It's a quick thing. But people don't understand those micro investments and this thing called compound interest.
Yes.
This is incredibly important. Einstein talked about it as the 8th wonder of the universe. Okay. Compound interest is basically what says that if I give you a penny today and I tell you I'm going to double the amount that you have every day for a month. So if I say, okay, 2 pennies tomorrow, 4 pennies the day after, 8, 16, 32, etc. Okay. I'm going to do that for a month. Or I'm going to give you $2.5 million or euros or whatever your currency is right now. Which do you choose? Most people will say, I want the 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay. If you hit a month where you go over 29 days, you made a bad call.
Mm.
Because you're going into on day 30, you're going into 5 million. I'm in day 29, you're going over 2.5, but you're going into 5, you're going into 10. That's how compound interest works. It's called a miracle. That's why it doesn't take so much. This is why they say, oh, start investing early. It's the same with your health. I was watching this great movie the other night. I thought it was great because I hardly watch any movies. So when I do, I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing. But anyway, they were in space and it was a good movie. But anyway, they're in space and there was this sign up on the wall that says, only use what you don't want to lose. And you see this woman running. She's very athletic. It's beautiful. Now, here's the thing. You got to use it like everything else. I could go on and on about this because this goes into talents, this goes into your passions, this goes into finding your vision for yourself. But as far as your health and your well-being is concerned, you have got this form, this vessel. It is your vehicle for carrying around this beautiful formless light that you have within. Use it, like enjoy it, figure out what that enjoyment is for you. Don't let anybody else tell you what it is for you. Experiment, try things out, go a little bit at a time so your whole system doesn't freak out while you're trying to get somewhere. Again, it comes back to the secret. You are that. This is coming to you because you are that. If you've listened this long and you're here and you're with us, it's because this is who you are. This is who you are. So remember that and say, what does this person do? Oh, this person tunes into stuff like this to remember the truth about who they are. Oh, this person goes and gets outside in nature. Guess why? Because not only is it going to help my body, but it's going to help my mind. It's going to help my ability to focus. It's going to help all these other things. And because that's what this kind of person or character does. And at the same time, I'm playing a character and I might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. And what I love about your advice is, like you said, so many people think, okay, so I need to achieve this goal. So I need to go to the gym. I need to sweat it out for an hour. And if I miss it, then, I've fallen back. But what I love about what you're saying is, just kind of following what you truly want to do. Like you said before, relax into it. So, you have your goal, which is great. Then just relax and just know that you're not less of a person if you feel like you don't have that yet, because it doesn't you don't need anything from it. You just need to relax and do what your body wants to do. If the idea of going to the gym makes you contract and makes you feel tense, but the idea of just staying home, putting on some music and dancing instead, even though it feels like the latter isn't as effective, if that what opens you up and that's what makes you feel good, then that's the choice you make. So when it comes to the kind of exercise you do and the kind of food you eat, does a salad make you feel down and depressed? But do you prefer, something a bit more hearty, something like, steak and rice or something like that, or whatever? Go for the thing that kind of opens you up, but then is still in line with, respecting your body and, this vessel that's carrying us around. So, I mean, it's just about relaxing and dropping into yourself and figuring out, what do I like? I'm not looking at anybody else. What do I like to do to stay active, and to, what food do I like, and kind of respecting that. And that's what I love about it. It's easy. It makes it sound easy.
It's so simple.
I don't want to belittle anyone's journey, because it can be tough. And I've been there. I had an eating disorder in my 20s. So I know what it's like, but the way I got out of my disorder is, if I look at it, I kind of relaxed. That's basically what happened. I said to myself, I mean, I know we're kind of running out of time, but I said to myself, do you know what? For the next 6 months, I don't care what weight I am. I'm just gonna kind of relax. I'm just gonna eat what I want, but I just want to be healthy. I want to get better. So literally for 6 months, I was just like, I'm not going to weigh myself. I'm not going to care. I can put on weight. I can lose weight. I don't care. And that kind of pulled me out of the cycle, the binge eating cycle that I was in. So that kind of worked for me. And I think that works for everything, So what you're saying in my heart is true, and it's a reminder as well, because I've got my journal here, which I journal every morning. And sometimes if I miss it, I feel bad. I'm just like, oh, I haven't journaled this morning, so I'm, you know, I'm not sticking to my routine. I'm kind of punishing myself. But, you know, this conversation is kind of reminding me that, you know, just relax. It's okay. Like, you don't actually, I don't need anything from this journal. Like, I don't, the goals I've listed in there, like, I don't need them. Like, because there's so many other variations out there of how I could live this life. Like, I don't need these exact goals, but I have them, and you know, it's fun. Like, I enjoy having them. So that's what I've kind of gained from the conversation. Would you say that was kind of accurate? Was I off in any way, or would you say we're on
I
the right
love that. I
track?
feel like if all of us left with just this notion of relaxing, like you actually already are perfect. I mean, and I know that'll be hard to hear. It's a little bit like when you said easy. I think the thing to remember is it isn't easy to remember this. It's simple. It's so simple. Everything we've said is so simple. Doesn't necessarily make it easy. Okay. And we've both been in those places where like, this is hard as AF, right? This is a hard AF, as they say. You know, we've been in those places, but here's the thing. It's very, very simple. If you go back and listen, if you go back and just remind yourself, oh, wow, yeah, oh, hold on. I actually don't have to be so rigid about this. I don't have to hold to these ideas. And it'll feel a little scary at first, but you just start opening up, and you can literally do this physically. I actually think dance is a great way to do it. You know, you literally just start to say like, oh man, I've gotten so entrenched, so encased in these ideas. And let me just see if I can start to just, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Like, for example, I used to be also as well, very controlling around my eating. Now I'm an incredibly intuitive eater. Like, but it wasn't overnight. It wasn't easy, but it was simple. It was simple because it was listen to yourself, know thyself. How simple is that? Listen. And how hard can it be? So if you sense that, and you can tell the limit is so easy, like I say, okay, if you're scrolling through something and you feel like kind of nauseous after, like that's pretty clear that maybe that's not the right place for you. If you listen to this, for example, may or may not be, but you listen to the whole thing and you're like, hey, there was something in there for me. You go back, rather than going all over the place looking for everything. Da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Love it.
It's like, we need to wind it back. You know, one of the things I was talking about was like the difference between FOMO and JOMO, like just joy out on it, like have fun with missing out and all the other crap that people are telling you that they have your answers and they know what you should do. They don't. If something reminds you like, oh, wow, yeah, I do have these answers. I do know I can be intuitive about this. I can soften around this. I can relax. Wow. How nice is that? So simple. Yeah.
I love it.
I think you nailed it.
Oh, do you know what? That was such a fabulous conversation. And I just wanted to, this can be a quick answer, but I just wanted to know, Cortney, what is your next big dream?
Oh, you know what's so funny? Well, one of the things I've started is a fiction book. So I'm writing this fiction book.
I love it. So stand-up comedy can come later. Let's be a fiction writer. Like,
I actually recently did modeling for the second time, which is something I never would have thought I would do. I did some modeling for this boutique in Italy right by my house. One of my biggest dreams is singer-songwriter. So I write music, I play some instruments, but my favorite instrument is my voice. And that's one of my dreams. I mean, I want to do lots of things. If I'm, however long I can play this game, I want to play full out.
And you know what? For anybody who's going to be following you after this, following your journey, I wouldn't be surprised if you're like singing and then you're like on a fiction, kind of on a shelf with all the fiction writers, and then you're like stand-up comedy, like Netflix special, and like, because you know how to do this, like, you just relax into it and it is what it is. And I just think we can take that on board as well. So that was such a
can I say one last thing? If anyone listening is really struggling with like, oh yeah, it's easy for you or whatever, I highly suggest, there's so many things I would suggest, but the one thing I want to say is just lay down, maybe lay down and even re-listen to this, or just lay down, get horizontal, because that is a way to trigger automatically the relaxation response. Maybe start yawning too, and just listen to this over again and just see how much of it you can let sink into your being so that your being can start to change form if that's what you desire. Thank you so
Great
much.
advice.
I think you're awesome.
Oh, I think you're awesome. This was so good. I'm just so grateful that you've been on this podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone listening. We love you.